Isekai Quartet is basically therapeutic. That's the best way I can put it. It really does feel like therapy. Whether you need it or not, you'll watch 10 minutes, give or take, of an episode. It's so basic, it's so simple, but it just de-stresses you and makes you laugh on the process. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying how they're taking the formula of basically continuing a plot each week here. Obviously, the first season did have that here, but I like how, combined with last week's episode of getting in trouble, then combining with episode 3 of season 2 with this week, and giving Detention in probably the most brutal way you could give Detention, with this cast of characters, I have to say, this was a blast. Yes, I was laughing at the suffering of these characters, but I mean, you can look at shows like Konosuba. From one perspective, which is the viewer's perspective, it's a hilarious show, but from someone like Cosmo's perspective, it's an absolute hell nightmare. You know, comedy and tragedy, they're always two sides of the same coin, so even though I kind of felt bad for laughing at some situations with, like, the Cockroach King, I also was just laughing my ass off, and it is such a joy to watch this show. Now, one thing I do want to bring up, which even though it doesn't technically relate to this episode, it kind of does on the process. I know a lot of people are talking about how little the Rising of the Shield Hero cast of characters have been in Season 2 so far. Really, the first episode, he was decently involved in that episode. Last week, he was there for a brief moment. This week, nowhere to be seen. And I mentioned it slightly with my episode 2 review, is that I kind of feel like the way they're going about the Shield Hero is that he is going to kind of be like the background character for probably half the season, because if you've seen the Rising of the Shield Hero, he's very much a loner and for good reasons, but as he starts trusting his party more and more, he starts opening up his heart and kind of can connect with more people than his central crew. So I almost feel like, this is obviously just my prediction, what they're going to do is probably for the first half of the season, it is going to remain on the quartet as we've known it, which really isn't a bad thing because the quartet that we have from season 1 and now season 2, they could probably handle 3 seasons by themselves. There's enough ways to mix and match the cast to make it hilarious. Hell, we got interactions in this episode that we really haven't seen too much of in the previous season. So I almost feel like what they're doing is they're basically setting it up to keep the focus on the quartet, and then maybe in the midway point, let now Fumi and the gang start trusting more and more people, which would make total sense for his story and his character in question. Now, there is another possibility. This was all just for marketing reasons. They introduced the Shield Hero and they're not really using him to his full potential, which could be a possibility and would definitely be disappointing. But I mean, at the end of the day, all they really said for season 2 was the Shield Hero was joining. I think fans, including myself, definitely hyped it up more like the Shield Hero would be the dominating force of the season, and so far he isn't. In some ways it's disappointing, but I mean, I'm laughing even harder than I did in the first season, so I can't say this season is a flop or anything like that. I am loving this season, but I've seen a lot of discussion about how now Fumi is definitely a side character, which does make sense, he's in a different class. But it does feel to me like what's going to happen is the midway point of the season, maybe even later than that, maybe earlier than that, the Shield Hero, he'll start interacting more and more as he starts to trust them and doesn't just see some weird shenanigans in the hall that he has to shield prison himself to protect himself from toads and things like that. That's just my theories and speculations anyway. Obviously, we'll know by the time season 2 wraps up whether Shield Hero was there just for marketing purposes or if they were saving him for a proper reveal. Obviously, time will tell, but those are my thoughts anyway. Now, this episode, though, I have to say, combined with last week, I mean, by itself, just the idea of Detention is funny, especially when you have the Cockroach King, which, I mean, they literally are torturing the students for trying to steal a little drink on the side. I mean, boy, that is messed up. It's hilarious by itself, but when you combine it with what happened with last week and Aqua and all of them, it is like this show is painfully hilarious in the best possible way. I sometimes laugh so much it hurts. I mean, when I saw who was helming the Detention, I was like, at first, I was like, I have no idea. I had no idea who could be helming Detention. I thought it would be someone we've already seen before in Isekai Quartet, and as they're building up of what's happening here, I'm like, are they really going to go this far? Are they actually going to torture these students? And combined with when you see them leave Detention and there's basically this, they're coming out of every which hole, and I'm like, they literally are explaining it as they're torturing them. Last week, they did a hilarious thing of basically censoring, like, liquor names and things like that. They called it, like, bubbly, sparkly water, or whatever Aqua called it. And I love that because they're basically treating these characters like they're children, even though they're mostly all adults. And I love how they don't even just shy away from the details of what's happening to apparently what they're considering kids in this show despite them being adults. This show is so twisted and hilarious, and I love it. And I really appreciate how very little you saw of the torture. It was just like you saw a little thing from the side, And if you've seen, these anime questions, you know what's going on. But still, I just love how brutal it was and how pretty much the class as a whole agrees this is messed up and we have to save them. Just the whole idea that you can have the principal just do something so menacing, and there's only a very select few people in the main classroom who are like, oh yeah, torturing or, getting information out of people, that's totally fine. And then the rest are being like, we gotta do something. Which I did like. I kind of like the idea of partners and just friendship and companionship, work colleagues in some ways you could call this. I like how they all just are like, all right, we gotta do something. And how we get our girl just wanting to basically explode the school to such a degree that it would be flooded so they could do a good deed and get it out. I was honestly expecting Aqua to completely shit the bed here and get them even more detention, even though we know she's the goddess of water and her little party tricks can actually be useful. I thought there would be something where like she would drop it or drop it on the principal and it would get even worse, the torture would spiral out of control. So I actually was kind of relieved, but also a little bummed out, because the sick part of me is like, I just kind of want to see how far they can push these characters off the deep end. And then the normal part of me, the nice part of me is like, okay, you guys are sick and twisted, let them go back to class. And I never thought I'd be saying that about Konosuba characters or ReZero characters and things like that, but I just love how it just brings out such a ridiculous and basic atmosphere to allow both such horrible sequences both feel so normal in a weird and warped way. You get this moment with Amelia basically being like, hey, is there anything we can do? And we see her boy just being like how good of a girl she is because he works for such a murderous, horrible person in his eyes. And I'm just like, there's so many pairings we haven't really seen or conversations we haven't had the pleasure of witnessing as of yet. So even if like the Shield Hero is like in one episode total worth of content this season, there's still so many ways to make us laugh. Obviously, I am hoping for more Shield Hero content, of course. I mean, I love the Rising of the Shield Hero, and I was jumping for joy seeing that Season 2 would introduce him. But I am loving what they're doing with the pairing so far. Like, it doesn't feel to me like, obviously, I'm a little bummed out we haven't seen more Shield Hero, but I'm not, like, disappointed in this season in the slightest. Like, it is entertaining me to such a degree that I might even be enjoying it more than the first season, and I've only seen 3 episodes versus the 12 of the first season. Because the first season, while it was funny, it was still getting the momentum going, figuring out what it truly wanted to do, and even though I was never bored by the first season, I mean, this season is just, it's speeding by. It does not follow the speed limit and is just trying to do as much as possible in 10 short minutes, basically removing the opening and ending, maybe even a little less, 9.5 minutes. And I love how even though it is such a short runtime, similar to last week, it doesn't feel like the pacing was off. I mentioned in my first impressions how I was kind of hoping that we wouldn't see the ending and maybe it would just play alongside the characters, so we would have more runtime for the anime. But based on the kind of sneaking into the principal's office and now the detention arc, they both felt like they didn't need any more time. Like they had an objective, they had a mission and what they wanted to tell, the laughs they wanted to show you, and the pairings they wanted to explore. They did so flawlessly and it didn't need any more time. And I don't know where they really want to go with next week, because now that they're out of trouble, I'm sure there's going to be some new shenanigans that they'll get wrapped up into. Hey, maybe we'll get Shield Hero content. Who knows? I'm just appreciating how it is feeling more than just random pairings and conversations that is happening, like a lot of Season 1 felt like. Of course, there were big events, like you can look at Episode 12 and how they had that little like event game where, hey, if you win, you can go back to your original worlds, and then that was just a blue balls tease. I like how this season so far is really structuring it as each episode has like a main objective or a main little story hook, and whether that connects to the following episode or is just a self-contained story, it is so absurd and hilarious, and I love it. I really feel like as long as the remainder of this season follows in this path, basically just having really funny punchlines and just really great and new fresh interactions that we didn't get to see much of either in the first season, if at all, just keep doing that. And if you can sprinkle in some Shield Hero content that is going to continue to feel like the Shield Hero but applied to Isekai Quartet, this will be a perfect Isekai Quartet season. And even if they don't use Naofumi and the gang to their full potential, I'm still gonna say it's a damn amazing anime, because you can't make me laugh this much and then have just one thing not go according to what I thought was gonna happen and ruin the entire project. No. Do I want to see more Shield Hero content? Of course I do. But I mean, you got the detention. I mean, that's good enough for an episode. I wasn't thinking about Naofumi and the gang until the episode finished. I was like, huh, there's no Shield Hero. Obviously, Shield Hero wasn't needed for this, but I am just loving how they're really spicing up the formula without abandoning what made the first season so great. It's going to be interesting to see where they truly want to go with future episodes, and obviously what they're going to do with our new quartet formula, because we obviously still have a quartet in our main classroom, but the other classroom now has a Shield Hero. And I'm kind of curious to see, because I kind of feel like we're obviously going to get a season 3 probably next year. Most likely, I would be shocked if we didn't. I'm curious if they continue to add more characters, if when we finish up with season 2, if they do decide to keep it on the focus of the main classroom, if maybe when we get like a season 3 of season 4, if maybe they'll shift the focus over to the other classroom with all the new characters that they'll introduce. That's just something that could easily be happening, what they're setting up for future, because I kind of feel like because of how simple of a production this is, it's obviously perfect because of its simplicity. I kind of feel like maybe they're setting up more for a long-term sort of situation, rather than just saying, okay, you're a quartet, but we're going to have 5 perspectives in every episode, something like that. Just something I'm thinking about, but nonetheless, this was a hilarious episode. I might even go as far to say it was my favorite episode of the season, one of the best Isekai Quartet episodes without a doubt in my mind. Loved it, and I can't wait to see where they're going to go, but let me know your thoughts. What are you thinking about season 2 overall? What are you thinking about the Rising of the Shield Heroes incorporation, or lack of incorporation of season 2? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.